Hello, in this lesson, we are going to be looking at the topic of how AO2 is not just language analysis. So our objectives for this session are that we're going to understand that AO2 is not limited to language analysis, but includes a wider range of writers' methods. We are going to learn how to analyse the writer's structural and narrative choices in relation to their intentions, and we are going to explore how to link to the writer's methods, to themes and messages within the text. So welcome to today's session where we'll explore the full scope of AO2. Now, the examiners' reports every year, irrespective of the exam board, always talk about the fact that students rely too heavily on language analysis and neglect other elements of AO2. And AO2 is more than just analysing language. It's about understanding the writer's methods, so anything that the writer has done to achieve their aims, and then how they use them to convey meaning. By the end of this session, you'll know how to analyse the writer's structural choices, narrative perspective, and overall intentions. So what does AO2 involve then, you might be asking? So AO2 involves anything that the writer does, and we analyse those writers' methods, and this can include language, the word choices, imagery, symbolism, and metaphors. This can include the structure, which is often overlooked and neglected by students, so how the text is organised, scenes, acts, chapters, sequencing, pacing, and the form, so the genre or format of the text, whether it's a play, poem, novel, first-person narrative, dramatic monologue. So that is the form of the text. So the narrative methods can also be considered as AO2, so the point of view, unreliable narrators, shifts in perspectives. So in Macbeth, as an example, Shakespeare uses soliloquies, which is a structural method, but part of AO2, to allow the audience insight into Macbeth's internal struggles, helping to explore his moral decline. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, don't just focus on one method. Aim to discuss a range of the writer's choices in every response. So language, structure, and form, because that's really going to help you hit the top marks, because most students only focus on language. So considering writer's intent. Now, if you've looked at any of the other free sessions in this series, you will know that I've talked a lot about the writer's intent. It's so important because writers make deliberate choices to communicate messages or themes. And AO2 requires you to consider these intentions. Ask yourself, why did the writer choose this particular method? How did it help them explore a key theme or convey a message to the audience? So as an example, Priestley uses the character of the inspector as a structural device in an inspector calls. His role is to reveal the secrets of each character, slowly building tension and delivering Priestley's message about social responsibility. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, always link your analysis back to the writer's intentions. Why did they choose this method? How does it help them communicate their views? And how does it help them critique society? So structural choices, then I mentioned right at the beginning, this is something that's often overlooked. It is one of the most overlooked areas of AO2, but it is crucial to the way a writer conveys meaning. So consider how the text is organised. Why does the writer introduce information at key moments? And if you can identify that and unpick that in a meaningful way within your essays, that is really going to push you towards the top of the mark scheme. So as an example, in Macbeth, the use of short, disjointed sentences in Macbeth's soliloquy, "Is this a dagger which I see before me?" reflects his unstable mental state and builds tension. The structure mirrors his psychological fragmentation. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, look at how the structure of the text creates tension, suspense, or reflects the character's emotional states. So discuss how the arrangement of scenes or chapters influences the audience's understanding. And then form, how this shapes meaning. So form refers to the genre or the way that the text is constructed. So plays, poems, and novels all have different conventions that shape meaning. And writers choose specific forms for a reason. And this choice influences how their message is revealed. So as an example, just to go back to Macbeth, it is a tragedy, a genre that traditionally explores the downfall of a tragic hero. Shakespeare follows this form to depict Macbeth's moral and psychological decline, warning the audience, remember, it's a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, consider how the form of the text supports its meaning. If it's a poem, how does the form, e.g. a sonnet or dramatic monologue, contribute to its themes? If it's a play, how do the stage directions or soliloquies or monologues contribute to the audience's understanding? And then we can also consider narrative perspectives. The narrative perspective shapes how the reader or audience understands the characters and events. Writers may use first person, third person, or omniscient or unreliable narrators to influence how the audience perceives the story. And if you want more detail on these, have a look at them because I don't have time to go through them now, but these are different narrative perspectives that a writer may choose to use. And then as a narrative perspective example, we can look at Animal Farm. So Orwell uses an omniscient third-person narrator, so omniscient meaning all-knowing, third-person narrator to provide a detached perspective on the event. So the narrator seems to know everything but is outside the story. And this allows the reader to see the growing corruption of Napoleon and the pigs. And this reinforces Orwell's critique of totalitarian regimes. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, pay attention to shifts in narrative perspective because sometimes this can change. Why does the writer choose a certain point of view? What effect does it have on the audience's understanding of the characters or themes? Because sometimes you will have novels with multiple narrative perspectives, and that's interesting as well because we get insight from different characters, and that can also influence and affect how we understand certain characters or certain themes. And then combining the methods, you want to also bring all these methods together, bring all these AO2 methods together for a top grade essay to show that you fully understand the different methods that a writer can use. Because a top grade essay doesn't just focus on one method. Instead, a top grade student will combine methods to create a more nuanced essay and a more nuanced analysis with many facets, so many aspects to it. And think about how language, structure, and form work together. So they don't work in isolation, they work together to convey the writer's message. So as an example, in Macbeth, Shakespeare uses both language and structure to build tension. The metaphor of the bloody hands symbolizes guilt, while the structure of the soliloquies allows the audience to witness Macbeth's inner turmoil and witness Macbeth unravel. Together, these methods reveal the theme of guilt and psychological decay. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, when analysing a passage, always think about how multiple methods interact. For example, how does the structure of a soliloquy enhance the imagery or symbolism within it? And the same goes for poetry. We need to be looking at language, structure, and form and how they work together. So combining those methods and get into the habit of that early. And then as an example, Shakespeare uses soliloquies in Macbeth to give the audience insight into Macbeth's inner conflicts, allowing us to witness his gradual psychological decline. In Act 2, Scene 1, Macbeth's soliloquy, "Is this a dagger which I see before me?" illustrates his growing sense of guilt and paranoia. The fragmented sentence structure reflects his mental instability, while the imagery of the dagger symbolises the violent path he is about to take. Through this structural choice, Shakespeare conveys the destructive consequences of unchecked ambition, highlighting his broader message about the moral consequences of power. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, always link the method back to the writer's broader themes or messages. So thinking about the writer's bigger idea, bigger message, and their intentions. And for top marks, go beyond just identifying the method, explore how it reflects the writer's critique of society or of human nature. So common pitfalls that students encounter, focusing only on language, as I mentioned before. Remember, AO2 encompasses structure, form, and narrative methods too, as well as characterization. That falls within that. We've got a whole different session on that. So if you haven't already seen that, do go and check that out. And describing rather than analyzing. Avoid simply identifying methods or just the method. Always explain why the writer used it and how it conveys meaning. And don't ignore the writer's intentions. AO2 is not just about feature spotting or technique spotting. Again, the examiner's report every year criticizes and sort of says that students shouldn't do this because it's about understanding what the writer was trying to achieve. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, don't treat AO2 as a technique spotting exercise. Always link the method to the writer's message and consider the effect on the audience. So just some final thoughts then. AO2 is not limited to language, as I've really laboured in this session. It covers a range of methods that the writer uses to convey their message. When analysing a text, always consider the writer's intentions behind their structural, narrative and formal choices, and try it yourself. That is the best way to get used to doing this. Write a paragraph analysing how Shakespeare uses both structure and language in Macbeth's soliloquy, or whichever Shakespeare text you've studied, or any text you've studied. Think about how the writer has used structure and language and form. But in the case of Macbeth, you could look at is this a dagger I see before me, to explore the theme of guilt, because we've already gone over that as a starting point. But apply these techniques from this session to many of the texts that you've studied, all of the texts that you've studied, to really get used to this and remember that AO2 is not just language analysis, it's so much more than that. So that brings us to the end of this session. If you have found it useful, make sure you go and check out the other free sessions in this series, and do go and check out the website as well, where there are loads and loads of other lessons to support and help you in preparation for your exams. And don't forget to follow us on social media as well.